Hi, welcome Nupur Dave. Welcome to the CTK Smartcast.
Thank you so much, Harish, for inviting me and having me here.
Yeah. So when I asked Nupur for an introduction, so this is a very short introduction that she gave me. Nupur Dave, she says, an ex-Googler and author who, apart from working full time at a neobank, consults NRIs on the side. She has published 2 books and helps NRIs make a decision to move or not move to India. So, given the fact that you are an author, I think you've packed enough in this, 1-2 line introduction to keep the listeners and viewers, curious about what all is going to be, coming in the next 1 hour or so.
Yes.
So, one interesting thing is there's so many aspects to you, Nupur, as we just looked at your 1-line, 2-line description as well. I've known you for probably what the last 20 years, but I actually know very little about what you do at work. I know a lot of what you do outside of work, which we are going to cover a lot of. But if you can quickly tell me about your career arc, what all you've been doing over the last 18-20 years, we can start from there.
Yeah, it's very common, Harish, to not know what your friends do at office. And sometimes I think it's better that way. So I would like to talk a little bit about my journey of how, like every other Indian student, I moved from India to the US to pursue my master's degree. And those decisions were made by default. It wasn't something I consciously thought of. But in America, I got certain opportunities that I feel really grateful for. And one of them was I got the opportunity to work for Google. And very early on, this I started with them in 2007, when it was still a very small and growing company. There were about 20,000 people at the time that I had joined. And that really changed a lot of things for me. And as much as you would say that it sounds cliche, but it was a life-changing event for me, mostly because of the type platform it offered me to do and experience different things in life. To get to the topic of what exactly I do for a living, now it is an interesting transition because I studied mechanical engineering for the simple reason that I was not interested in computer science at that time. And I'm now kicking myself because that's all I'm doing. I'm working with computer engineers. And at that time, it seemed like a very good path to follow because my father was a mechanical engineer from COEP, same college as me, and my grandfather as well. And I really enjoyed the courses that I took. Doing well academically helped me get into a good school. After that, in America, the thing is that you are having a little very little choice, especially if you're an international student. So what I did with my first job was basically give me anything but sponsor my H1B. So I leapt at any offer that was given to me, and that's very very standard for a lot of students, no matter which school they go to. They could be brilliant in academics, but at the end of the day, you are tied to somebody giving you an H1B visa. And I was very hungry from inside to do something in data analysis. So that kept driving me to search for a job that I would really, really uh, like. And so after a couple of years of working in a couple of small companies in Atlanta, where I got an opportunity to work in Google. And this is also not an ordinary sort of environment. It was in the Google data center. If anyone has an idea of what a Google data center looks like, let me describe it for you because you'll understand how unique this opportunity was. Imagine a very, very, very large warehouse with rows and rows and rows of machines the Atlanta data center, which was top secret at the time. And my friends would joke to me that they're going to follow me to work one day because I was not allowed to tell them where I work. So in that time, I had an opportunity to be a forecasting and demand planning analyst. And it's funny how your personal life starts making you change your decisions about where your career should go. Because at that time I had finished about 6 years in Atlanta, and I was getting really bored of the place because it started growing smaller and smaller in my mind because I had sort of exhausted all the options there. So I made the decision to move to the headquarters of Google, which is in Mountain View, California. And with this location change, also my career changed a little bit. So career changes sometimes happen by happenstance or chance, or you take whatever's around you. And there I got an opportunity to become a product/program manager in network operations. It's still under the umbrella of infrastructure. And to just fast forward a little bit, in 2016, which is about 4-5 years ago, I moved back to India. And then I changed, I decided that since I'm in India, this is a great opportunity to try out whatever I've always wanted for the rest of my life, for my life up to that point. And I know we're going to talk a little bit more about that. But essentially, what I would summarize all this is that I ended up being in the software engineering realm. And ever since, I've been a product/program, technical program manager for a software company.
Right. Yeah. So I know this. If we have to draw a timeline, we've reached 2016. So at this point, I'm going to ask you a quiz question because that's something actually which started this interaction for us, right? I mean, I know you through our quizzing days back at COEP. I know you love your quizzing. You also did your fair share of quizzing at Google in the US, in India. And you've also been a member of the CTQ compound. So to make things interesting, there's actually something at stake for these quiz questions. For every question that you get right, you're actually going to get a discount code that you can give to anyone for the Daily Reader. Right?
Okay. No pressure.
And and the hint is that this is going to somehow be related to you and your life. Okay, the three quiz questions that we have. So the first question. So for several years, especially in the 2010s, right, the most searched keyword in India in the Google Zeitgeist, if I'm pronouncing it right, was this entity owned by the Indian government. Many people used to hate their experience with this entity. This particular entity was listed on the NSE in 2019, but the government is still the majority stakeholder. So which entity are we talking about, or what was the most searched keyword in India in the last decade?
Wow, this is super interesting. So you said this was as of 2019?
Yeah, in the last decade, in most of the years, this was the most searched keyword. I think the ones after that typically were Flipkart and something else. So the first was this specific entity, which is also a website. Let me give you a hint.
This is so interesting because all the answers that are coming to my mind are nothing that would make it the most searched item.
Yeah. Right? So think of it this way, that most people, most Indians used to actually hate their experience with this website.
Is it something related to Sarthi, like the DMV equivalent, RTO?
Not the RTO, think bigger, but you're in the right, somewhat right ballpark, I would say. But think bigger. RTO, if it is just for the state or the city.
So it can't be passport. It's not even data.gov.in.
No.
What is a government portal or something that people would be accessing all the time?
Yeah.
It's not even. I can't. It's interesting. I will need more hints.
So this entity was listed in the stock exchange in 2019. The government is still the majority stakeholder. People used to have a tough time just logging in, and they're probably having similar issues now with all the COVID site and all those things. But I'm guessing
a question that I am going to kick myself for. I I think nothing is coming to my mind right now. I'm just wondering what could it possibly be that I would have accessed. Yeah, I think you'll have to give me the answer here.
Yeah. So the answer that I was looking for was IRCTC.
Oh God. Okay. Very close, but you're right. You're right. Okay.
Yeah. So
I see.
I'm
Yeah.
guessing a lot of that would have also been, IRCTC probably lacking a demand and, demand forecaster and not understanding how to, plan for all the traffic that they would generate. So the reason why I asked this question was that this was on the Google Zeitgeist and this was the most searched keyword on Google. But I also wanted to bring this contrast between Google and a GOI website, right? And when you came back to India, you also did some projects with the government of India. So
Yes.
how was that transition and how was that experience, that whole experience? And you can talk about it.
I worked with the government of India for 6 months. It was a 6-month contract. And the experience for me was life-changing. I'm not just supposed to talk about the details of it, but I can definitely talk about how it changed me as a person. And it's surprising because after working in the government, there were two things that I realized. One is that the media never spoke about the projects that we were working on, which were groundbreaking. And it made me question that when the government does something good, why isn't the media talking about it? So it makes me feel like when I see news in the media, I start realizing a lot of this is agenda driven, and I've sort of distanced myself from media. And the second thing is that you start appreciating the problem that the government has at hand, where India is a very, very big country, and to manage it is a huge task. So you sort of start to understand the problems that people in the government have to govern such a huge country, and you start feeling that if I can contribute, great, but if I can't, I don't want to be in the way. So I have really felt that at least the current government is really taking a lot of steps to democratize a lot of internal processes, and they have their heart in the right place, is what I've seen. The other experiences that I had were mostly related to living in New Delhi and experiencing the a very different culture than the corporate America as well as India. And I think that changed me a little bit, because the single point that I would like to focus on is, in America, you can treat everyone equally. You'll treat your CEO as like the janitor. There's a very famous saying, you can treat the bus driver, you can say hello to them, the watchman or whoever. But in India, it's not that simple. And there's one thing that I felt in Delhi, that as much as I wanted to treat everyone equally like I used to do in America, I slowly started learning that you have to take a step back. You have to look at the person in front of you and then decide how you're going to interact with them. I think that was one of the biggest learnings that I got, especially in Delhi, because the culture in Delhi is also, people are very guarded. So it taught me quite a few things in the people front once I moved out of corporate life into that kind of life.
Right. Yeah. So, yes, we might have a very bad experience with sites like IRCTC, but just give a thought to all that goes into putting that up in the first place, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So you had these, this stint with the government of India, and you did other projects as well. What are you doing now?
So currently, there are two things that I'm pursuing. Of course, my full-time job, which is in a neo bank. The second thing I'm doing is my NRI consulting, which is something I've been pursuing for the past 3 to 4 years. And I am hoping to scale that up as we speak right now.
Right. So before we come to the consulting bit, what exactly is a neobank? What does it do?
So you can think of neobanks as a digital only bank where they don't have any physical assets,
Right.
and everything you do is online through an app. The difference, you could say, you could ask that, a lot of companies already have an app, like ICICI Bank has an app. So how are you different? The way we look at it is that a lot of these companies have the DNA of finance. They don't have the tech DNA. So we're approaching this as a tech problem solve rather than a finance problem solve. That makes a huge difference in the way the product is built.
Yeah, sorry. There's a power cut, and whenever that happens, for a brief time, I just get disconnected. And it's not like it's because it's a Thursday. It happens on any day.
Oh,
This
really?
is when I first said Thursday. That was my first, reaction. Oh, it's Thursday. I said, वो हर दिन होता है तो Thursday का सोच के क्या करूँ मैं?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
So I'll it's actually recording. It's continuing to record, so we can start again. I'll ask you about what is a neobank, and you can start with the answer again. Yeah. Okay. So Nupur, you mentioned you're working with a neobank. So what exactly is a neobank?
you can consider neobank as a digital only bank without physical assets, and you do your transactions through an app. Now, you would ask, how is this different from an app that, say, an ICICI bank gives you? What I would like to say here is that a lot of banks have finance as their DNA, but not tech. So we're approaching this as a tech problem solve rather than a finance problem solve. And when you have tech in your DNA, the product that comes out is very, very, very different. It's a very enjoyable experience to do banking through that. And neo banking is now, I would say, the next wave that's coming through. There are a lot of neobanks in the UK that have reached more than $5 billion valuations. And a lot of new ones are springing up in India. You could ask why now? It's because the government has changed a lot of rules and regulations that were previously there around banking. And they've opened up new avenues where companies like our company can come up and create new things for the finance world.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And now coming to the to the other thing that you mentioned about NRI consulting. I know we're going to go deeper into that, but before that, you have many interests and hobbies. Photography. Your quizzing, your writing. You've also turned them into commercial interests, so to say. Right. So why did you choose to do that? And what did it take to do that? The reason why I'm asking this is some people try to keep their interests as just interest because they don't want to tie them to any commercial dealings because they feel I'm getting the joy out of it. I don't want to make it work. But you've chosen to do photography. You've chosen to take your writing to actually write a book as well. So why did you do that?
I'd like to start off by mentioning that business is not in my DNA. I don't come from a business family. My full extended family, nobody's into business. And we know that even if I get into business, I'm not going to succeed because I don't have that mindset. So this clears the way to understand that I don't think from a money first point of view. I never got into anything thinking I'm going to make money out of this. Now, to talk about how many different hobbies I have. To be honest, I think it's so annoying to have too many hobbies. I did quite a lot of things. I love sports. I set up the cricket team for women. I've been pursuing sports for a very long time, writing, photography, and there's a host of other things that I started and stopped. And I feel like if you have one hobby, you're lucky. Consider yourself not a wanderer. I've been dabbling in a lot of things to find what I'm good at. But what I had to consciously do was to stop pursuing certain hobbies. And the way I went about that was to understand what is the impact that I can make in this world. What is the impact I can make with food photography? There are a lot of photographers who are way better than me. And people look at a photograph and then they're like, oh, nice. And then they move on. It's not changing their lives. But I do have other things that can change people's lives, which is like writing a book. So I felt I narrowed down on those things after doing a lot of trial and testing. So it took some time. To answer your question about why monetize, now there's one or rather two things here going on here. One is I left my full-time job to write. So once you don't have an income, then you start being like, okay, you know what, maybe I should see if I can, maybe I should even just try it out. Let's see what happens. And the second thing is, this area is so niche that there is a possibility of monetizing it. I can give you a counter example. There are a lot of people who pursue, say, the makeup space of photography. You know, it's a very saturated market. If you put yourself out there as a photographer in Pune today, there are a host of other photographers who will outbeat you in terms of pricing for any kind of event photography or something like that. But with NRI consulting and, you know, this niche, it's not, first of all, it's not something that I decided, I saw that this is a gap and I got into it. It was just coming naturally to me. And I realized that there is a need of it in the market. And that's when I decided that it makes sense for me to put some structure around the work that I have already been doing for a very long time. And that is what led to monetizing. Just one more point I want to add. The book, even while I was publishing the book, I didn't even realize I would be getting royalty. It's not a focus. I have spent a lot of money on my hobbies to get me to a certain level than the income I'm making from it. So somebody is thinking of leaving their full-time job and pursuing a hobby, I would say hold your horses.
I think that's very sound piece of advice. You know, first survive today. That's when you actually start planning for tomorrow, right? Yeah. So you know, before we get to NRI consulting, I wanted to go back to, you know, two moments in your life. One is, you know, when you left the US to come to India, and the other, like I'm sure somebody would have used this phrase to you, that when you threw away a dream job in a company like Google. So what went through your mind, and you know, how did you go about taking that decision? If you can address both the parts. First was moving from US to India, but you're still with Google, and the second part, when you quit Google with no other thing in hand at that time. So how did that happen?
So I'd like to mention that leaving America and leaving Google are two very different experiences. I've done both. I've left Google in India as well as left it while I was in the US. I had joined another company and gone back to Google, but leaving Google was slightly easier because it's not necessarily a one-way street. You can go back to a company you've left. Leaving America was the most difficult decision because it's not exactly a one-way street, but you are uprooting yourself completely. Right. By changing a company, you're probably just changing, you know, the bus number you take or the route you take to office. Now, leaving, a lot of people have different reasons for leaving a company like Google, and I'll talk a little bit about why it's so difficult. Can you imagine someone living in Silicon Valley, which is the center of all cutting edge technology of the world, and working in Google, which is for many, many decades been the number one company to work for. What would be going through such a person's mind if they're thinking of leaving is, where else can I go? What is better than this? So it boils down to the options that you have. And a lot of people may leave a company like Google for multiple reasons. One of them being getting a promotion becomes increasingly difficult. And California being expensive to live in, you'd need that money. You need the extra money to, maybe you want to not live with a roommate anymore. Maybe you want to afford a $3,000 a month apartment. And other companies may offer you more money than Google. So that's one reason. The second is close, which is you get stagnant, where you're not able to get promoted and you're getting sort of uneasy with that. And the third is the work content. Like many other big companies, Google is also a very big company, and it could be possible in certain teams your work is very narrow and you may not see a lot of movement or get fulfillment. So people do leave Google for such reasons. Now, if I go back to the leaving America part, it was a very confusing decision, because you're in Google in Silicon Valley in America, and then you would think, what can get better than this? And at that time, I thought of the two options that I felt were in front of me. One was I could move to New York just to experience a different life. New York is a very different city than any city in the world. And the only other option I felt like better than any other city in the US is India. Like moving to India seemed a better option than moving to South Bay or the suburbs of the US. So it boils down to what options you have and what phase of life you're in. So for me, at that point, I felt like I've tried everything. I've studied here. I've taken all the writing classes at Stanford that I wanted to. I created a cricket team. I'd done so many things. I felt like, okay, I have lived my life here and it's time to take the next move. It doesn't always work this way for other people. For many people, it could be the loss of a job or visa issues because of which they move back to India. But I'll move fast forward to why I left Google completely in India. And it goes back to that point of having options. And at that time, I got the offer to work with the government of India. And I felt like this is such a unique experience. I know this offer is not going to come again. And I felt like it was right time to explore my country and get to know it as I've always wanted to after 13 years in the US.
Right. Yeah. So, when at both these points, did you actually sit down with a decision-making journal, wrote down pros and cons? How was that process of going through it? And was it like, was the decision taken in a day? Did you mull over it for a few days, weeks? Just talk me through that.
You can make as many frameworks as you want. You can spreadsheet out your decisions, but at the end of the day, you are going to follow your gut.
Right.
I know a lot of people who get analytical, and you should, because logistically it kind of helps you compare things when you spreadsheet things out. But there is a voice inside you which tells you that there is something that is in the future that you want to explore, and then you take a leap of faith. It's not a day's decision, because these things, when they start creeping on you, it starts being that thing that comes to your mind when you wake up in the morning. And it happens day over day over day. And you come to a point where, at least for me, I realized that I was living the same life again and again and again. And when I saw the crossroads in front of me, I knew that if I chose to continue to stay in the US, I was again committing to living the same life that I lived the previous year and the previous years. So nothing was changing. And I am that person with a growth mentality, which meant that I wanted to see myself improving. So there's a word in Hindi which I feel is perfect for this. It's called utthar, which is elevating yourself to next level. And I felt like this decision of moving was the right thing to do to change a lot of things in my life. You can't spreadsheet this, you can't framework all of this. So my advice to people is do make a framework for yourself. But at the end of the day, it's, you maybe want to take a 10-day Vipassana course and just leave yourself alone with your heart and see what your body is telling you.
Right. Yeah. So at this point of time, we'll go to the next quiz question, Nupur. Okay. So 9th January 1915 is the date when Mahatma Gandhi returned to India from South Africa. Okay. How is that day celebrated in India today, or observed or celebrated in India today?
9th January, is it like... Oh, interesting. So I've not heard of a festival around.
Right. It's January. Not a festival, yeah.
Festival.
Over the last 20 years, yeah.
Would it be NRI Day?
It is the Pravasi Bharatiya Divas.
Okay, that was an easy one.
Right down your alley. Yeah. So tell me more about this NRI consulting work that you've been talking about. What is that all about?
So NRIs reach out to me when they are confused about whether they should move to India or continue to stay abroad. There is also a population that reaches out to me while they are in India and they're wondering if they should move abroad or not. Right now, that target audience is a little smaller, but mostly it is NRIs moving to India. And I want to talk a little about how this came about. I had written a viral post, which you have read, and a lot of people started reaching out to me after that, asking me about decisions they want to take in their lives. And I would be writing big emails with answers. I would be talking to them over the phone. I remember being on call with this girl for an hour and a half whose husband had passed away. She was in the US and she was so sad and she wanted to know whether she should move to India or not. And over 2 years of doing this, I realized that it would be more impactful if I structured this into a program where people can reach out to me systematically and talk to me in a dedicated 1-hour slot about what their issues are, and I can help them through it. So it's basically my experience of US, India, and of helping so many people have put me in a unique position where I can help them and make a change to their lives.
Right. Yeah. So, a lot of people have actually been monetizing their experience, monetizing their skills these days, right? So I just saw a tweet today saying, some Excel influencer has quit his or her job and is now doing, Excel training. And people said, oh no, this was actually a legit business for the last 20 years. People have been doing that. Just that, this person has been doing it. But the fact is, a lot of people seem to be knowing stuff and seem to have developed some expertise, some point of view. And now they are able to monetize it. A few years ago, I don't know if, it would have been so mainstream. If somebody told me that, yeah, I'm doing NRI consulting, I would have been surprised back then. Now I'm not, right? So what do you think is enabling this kind of a shift these days?
It's definitely social media, because of the avenues that social media is providing you to connect to people, put things out there. And the reverse, which is a monetizing strategy where people can reach out to you. This doesn't happen in my case, but say a lot of travel bloggers, they have hotels contacting them, giving them a free 2-night stay and free flight tickets. And why not? So people earn money because of the way they're able to network it out. The second thing is also that a lot of companies have now become open-minded about people taking leaves to pursue maybe 1 month stay at Ladakh, or I want to run a marathon, so I need a month off. So people are being very supportive. Third reason is also when you see others doing it, you feel more encouraged. So for example, when you see a travel blogger, you start feeling like, okay, they are doing it, so I can do this too. So people have shedded their hesitation and then plunged into it. So I feel these are the reasons why people have really opened up. One more point I want to mention is that um, until the 1900th century, the 9 to 5 job really didn't exist. And people are starting to realize that this 9 to 5 may not really work for everybody. It's not for everyone. Some people like the safety of it. Some people want a free job where they can do whatever they want whenever they want. And in India especially, people now have some money backing. It's not like how when we were growing up in the 80s, you can't afford to leave your job, you don't have an option. These days people have an option. You can get on Fiverr, or what is it, Upward, I think.
Upward.
Yeah, you can do some side gig while you're traveling the world. So internet has really enabled a lot of options to earn.
Right, right. So while that potential is there, like you said, all these platforms are now available. How should individuals be thinking about, any changes that they should bring about in terms of, their style of work, or how they think of upskilling themselves, and what did you have to do in terms of, say, just managing your time? And like you said, there's so many hobbies. What do you say no to? How does that come about?
I think one thing is, I feel very disappointed when I meet certain people. I feel they're cowards and they don't realize it. And I talk to so many people who are talented. They have so much they want to do, but they just can't take that first step. And it's like this. I remember a friend of mine came to me and she said, wow, you've lost a lot of weight, even I want to lose weight. So I told her, you do X, Y, and Z. And she said, yeah, I can do all this, but I always have a cookie for lunch and I can't leave that. And I rolled my eyes, because it's like you want something, but you're not willing to give up what is actually preventing you from getting there. And how do you help such a person? The only people that can help them is themselves. So one is that they have to make up their mind. The second thing is be a little realistic, because for example, I know this person who does food photography and the photographs are not really good, to be honest. And now if such a person starts thinking of making this a full-time job, they need to get really critical feedback and be open to it, and understand that maybe my work is not up to the mark and I have to find avenues to upskill myself. The other thing about upskilling, I'd love to talk a little bit about that, because there's a lot of noise out there. I'll take the example of my writing. There seems to be, everybody says write every day for writers. And there's a little bit of fine print to this that I want to talk about, which I found because I did this for so many years. The fine print is that you should write every day to become a better writer, but write towards a certain goal. I literally have about 30,000 words, like almost half a book worth of material just sitting there, because I was just writing whatever came to my head. And that was what was advised to me. Whatever comes to your head, put it down. But it's not towards a goal. So all that work has gone waste. So now I know that if I'm writing every day, it has to be towards a certain goal. And I feel like whatever idea or hobby you have in mind, you have to try things enough to understand what is working for you and what is not. And your answer doesn't have to be the same as what I discovered. Maybe for you it is, I write every day without a goal, it's working for me. But you have to put in that time.
Right.
And when that happens, when you're so madly passionate about it, it'll happen automatically. You can't force yourself to do such things.
Right, yeah. And anything around how did you manage your schedule, your time?
Yeah. So I paid someone to to do this, and I'll tell you why. I was not writing. I was just having these ideas, and then I realized, let me literally put my money where my mouth is. So I paid a group of, I mean, there's an editing, it's called managed self-publishing, managed publishing.
Right.
I put my money there, and they assigned an editor to me and a deadline. And once that deadline is hanging above your head, then things start rolling. So I know you and Ramanand have written a lot about habit forming, and I forced myself to put in a habit by paying someone to make me do it. It doesn't have to be this expensive. For people, it could be as simple as committing to someone else or making a public commitment. Something as simple as, I'm going to post on Instagram every day how much weight I've lost. That's
Right.
an idea I've actually thought about, and that could work for you. So you try small. If it doesn't work, then start thinking about the spending money options. So yeah, I am sorry to say, give a counter example where I didn't have any habits. This is how I forced myself to get into a
Oh
cadence.
no, this is actually one of the best ways of forming a habit. A commitment device is an integral part of developing a new habit, and what you did was, a commitment device. Whatever gets you to act, I think works.
Exactly.
Right, right. So let me come to the next question before we move to the next section. So this should be an easy one. So which Shah Rukh Khan movie was based on a Vijayadan Detha short story, previously adapted as a 1973 movie Dubidha?
Swadesh.
Yes, it is for this.
I said Swadesh before you completed the question.
Yes. So, so the reason why I asked you, I've always said you mentioned that, post which went viral and beyond viral, in my opinion, that you wrote on Facebook. So what role did personal branding play in whatever you have done till now? And was there any deliberate attempt around building that personal brand around your writing and the NRI consulting bit, your Khane Bhi To Yaro website? Was that did it emerge later, or was it bottom up plan that no, this is how the whole personal brand has to emerge?
I, as I mentioned, not a business person, not a marketing person, engineer at heart. I had no idea about what personal brand, personal equity, nothing like that. So I just approached it from, I like to do this, I'm going to do it. Now, I want to take your focus to Chetan Bhagat. Why are his books viral? He's a good storyteller. I don't know about his writing, but he has a brand. He has the IIT brand, he has the IIM brand, and it works for him, to be honest. Like, imagine if he was not from those labeled colleges. I don't know how that how successful that would have been for him. So I think for me, having these brands, first of all being a woman, then being from Google, um, and from a fairly decent college in the US. Maybe I'm being a little too playing it down a little bit, but there are certain factors that add to the personal brand, and I feel that people find it more authentic, more trustworthy when you have somebody with labels on them. I'm not trying to say it in a positive or negative way, but saying you work for Google, as opposed to saying I worked for Ross Systems, you know, these two things are like they play a big role in how people perceive you. So I feel that part really helped towards the personal branding. And there's a little bit of psychology here which I feel is your name also matters. Like, my name is really short. uh, I'm just imagining if my name was something really big, like maybe a very big South Indian name. Should I take your example?
You are free to do that.
So that kind of, like, if you're like a Srinivasan or some name that is very common, like a John Smith, as we say in the US.
Right.
Then that doesn't register. There's not as much stickiness as opposed to a name. So I guess I'm just born lucky that way. But they have a long way to go, to be honest. So I'm not sure if I'm an authority to speak about this answer. But I think I've not thought about personal branding, but maybe I should now.
Right. And how do people actually come to you now for the NRI consulting bit? So have you just like put it out there and left it the whole thing that if someone is interested, they will find their way to you, or you are like thinking about it in a more organized, formal manner that these are the segments and I should be approaching them. I know you've said you're not a business or a marketing person, but have you thought of how to reach those potential
I have dabbled a
customers?
little bit. For example, I tried Facebook ads. It did not work for me. I tried hiring a marketing firm. That did not work for me. I feel that any kind of targeting for the NRI audience is going to take some time, and ads is not the right way to go. For my book, I feel that it's picking up now, where now there are enough reviews on Amazon where people have started trusting that this is a book that can add value to me. And people I don't know are buying the book. Like, this is not just my friends, but it's picking up slowly. So I feel like I have not, as much as I would have want to, push my website out there, other than the normal SEO, search engine optimization that I have done, I feel like I'm going to have to wait for this to organically grow on its own.
Right, right. And on a similar note, what would your advice be to people who have different interests? How should they go about just putting it out there? I mean, that yes, I am interested in this. Some simple tips and toolkit that you would suggest or point to that put it up all on a Notion website, or just create a page. I don't know what would be your tips.
I cannot tell you the number of people who've come to me saying they want to start a blog and then they've not started it. So I think that the first thing is understand how committed you are to it. So what I had done 10 years ago when I started my Khane Bhi Do Yaro blog, I waited for 5 months of continuous writing to see if this is just a phase and will it go away, and it didn't. And so after that, when I realized like this is not going away, that's when I started bought a domain name. I started building a website to it. So I feel like if you're going to jump in directly into investing money, because it's a lot of money, hosting websites, getting someone to build a website for yourself, do it the easy way in the beginning to see if it's something that will stick. Once you've proved that to yourself, then there are so many things you can do. First, I would say buy a domain name. Say, for example, harishphotography.com. And then you have different options. You can use WordPress, you can use Wix to create a website. There are different advantages of using each of these. That's a longer conversation, so I won't get into details. But hosting a website, I would believe, is the first thing you should do for whatever hobby, whether you're monetizing or not. It's just wonderful to have a website you can point your friends and family to showcase your work.
Right.
And then right now, I think what's going on in the market is Instagram. Like a lot of people are moving from Facebook to Instagram, and of course it's the same company, but I really feel I can see the difference in the number of impressions I get through Instagram versus any other social media. For me, LinkedIn is the social media for choice. I'm a LinkedIn Spotlight awardee, so I kind of like that space for myself. But you cross post on all platforms, LinkedIn, Medium, Facebook, etc., and then see where things take you, where you get most traction, and take it from there.
Right, right. And coming to your book publishing, how was that whole process? You said you got somebody to finish the editing bit, but even after that, what was the process like for finding a publisher or self-publishing? How do you decide what to do? And then deciding the cover and any kind of marketing that you do after after the book is ready for launch. How do you go through all of that?
There's an interesting saying that to get a publisher for your book, you have to have already published a book. Catch 22 situation. So here's how I fixed it. So I've written 2 books. This was my first book. This I wrote on my own. I got a friend to design the cover for me. And I used some kind of free software that will format everything accordingly with the drop caps and everything. And I self-published this on Amazon. So then when I reached out to people, I could tell them I've already written 1 book. Now, the thing is that as much as I want to get published by Penguin and HarperCollins India, it's kind of, I think, like Bollywood, where you have to have certain connections, or maybe they reach out to you once you get really completely viral. So I, unfortunately, even after publishing, writing my manuscript and sending it out to them, I didn't get a break. And I'm not even focusing on that. There are certain disadvantages to getting it published because they drive the agenda. Then you can't write what you want to, you have to write what they want you to. The journey was pretty much structured once I hired. There are a lot of companies that do manage publishing. You can Google it. They have these stages where you have someone who does the business side, the marketing, book market research, they call it DMR. And then they decide what the cover, the name is going to be, what part of Amazon it's going to be listed in. These things, though they sound small, they really matter in the end. And then it went to the process of having an editor who helps me understand what I should be putting in chapters. Then it goes into another editor who reads the whole book and gives a high level view of chop this chapter, add this chapter. And then it goes into copy editing where they're correcting my English. And after that process, it goes into the more fun part where you're deciding what is my font going to be, what is my book cover going to be. And to be honest, I had a vision of how my book would look like. It didn't come out that way. Like, I didn't want a white book, but they have a science behind it. They're like, for self-help books, it should be white. If it's something else, it'll be this color. So I went with what they're the experts. And then they took it from there, where they published it on Amazon.com and .in and a lot of other countries' websites. And yeah, that's not much marketing after that. I didn't really enjoy those packages. As I mentioned, I did hire a marketing firm, but the quality of your work will speak for itself at the end.
Right. What was the toughest part of the whole journey?
Writing. It sucks. Editing is fun because you have a body of work to play with, but imagine you have a blank page in front of you, and I had wrote 80,000 words, this is double of this, and I had to cut all that down. So just people don't understand how difficult it is to come up with something from scratch on a blank piece of paper. And I feel like that I appreciate that in other authors, and I always make sure to mention it.
Right. Yeah. All right. So that brings us to the end of this interview. But before we let you go, we're going to, ask a few sort of rapid fire questions. Okay. These are not quiz questions, but something to wrap up the whole thing. Right. So who's your favorite author?
Wow. So I really like Stephen King because he puts 2 things together. He writes very interesting sentences, and he has a very interesting plot, and very few people are a combination of both. So he's there. There may be a few others, but I don't remember their names. And remember the book. There's this Where Do You Go, Benedict? I forgot the name of the author, but that book is so wonderful. It was written in the form of letters and it was so funny, and I really enjoyed that. So yeah, I would say Stephen King.
All right. One thing you miss about life in the US?
Oh my God, I can give you a list. So I don't actively miss anything, but yeah, I do miss shopping. I really miss shopping in the US. I think no part of the world can beat the US in shopping. So that and their breakfasts, the latte and their omelets and the bread. I really enjoyed that breakfast experience there.
Okay. One course that you would want to, take up as a student?
So since I have so many hobbies, I can list 100 things. But what I've always enjoyed is taking courses on writing, because I've always learned something new, and that's so specific to me. And I feel that if I had the opportunity to, I would continue to take courses with universities on how to further my writing craft.
Okay. One course that you would want to teach?
I have already taught writing, but yeah, I wouldn't mind teaching that. I already have a little bit of a experience in teaching writing.
Okay. What's the next book that you want to write?
Again, my topic is always NRIs. So I want to write about, the experience of living in the US as an NRI, as a woman, or I don't know, I've not really thought much about it, but I guess that would be the next thing I want to try.
Okay. And finally, what's next for Nupur?
I really want to build my consulting, and the way I'm thinking of going about it is YouTube. So I'm going to focus on creating YouTube videos. I'm going to use this as an opportunity to publicly commit to having a channel up and running with maybe say 10 videos by the end of May. So here is my commitment to myself in a public
Great.
forum.
This is going to go on YouTube as well. So, so fantastic, Nupur. I think, at Choose to Think, we talk about future relevance all the time. How do you up level for future relevance, or Utthan for, future relevance? So I think this has been a great example that we wanted to talk about your whole career arc, where you've been, talking about what next. And how do you go about it? Yes, there are, you're going to take these decisions from your gut, using your gut instinct, but you have to be practical about it as well. You talked about how you tested the waters, and I think that advice that you gave about how to create a website, and how you actually wrote for a few days for Khane Bhi Do Yaro before actually spending the money. I think that was a great piece of advice. So fantastic. Last 1 hour 15 minutes of chatting with you. So thanks a lot, Nupur.
Thanks a lot, Harish, for having me. I feel really privileged and honored to be here.